Here's a story generating a lot of interest today. An investigation's underway into allegations that a prize-winning Irish setter was deliberately poisoned at Crufts. 3-year-old Tandara Satisfaction, known as Jagger, collapsed and died in Belgium some 26 hours after leaving the dog show in Birmingham. A short time ago, Jagger's co-owner was questioned outside his home in Leicestershire, and here's what he had to say.
They wouldn't do something like that.
You're convinced?
Yes. They wouldn't do something like that. It's out of the question.
And what is the police involvement here? Have West Midlands Police been informed?
No, not I'm aware of, not at the moment, no.
Why is that?
I don't know. I'll have to go anyway.
What would you say to suggest it could be an inside job, Mr. Ball?
No.
Refute it? You refute it?
Yes.
Thank you.
The Kennel Club is deeply shocked and saddened to hear that Jagger, the Irish setter, died some 26 hours after leaving Crufts. We've spoken to his owners and our heartfelt sympathies go out to them. We understand that the toxicology report is due next week, but until that time we cannot know the cause of this tragedy.
Well, let's bring in a dog trainer, Hannah Greeno, who joins us from Bath this morning. Hannah, very good morning to you. Let's just talk about this unfortunate Irish setter, Jagger. Co-owned. Will strike a lot of people outside of the Kennel Club world. It's quite an odd practice, but how common is that a dog like this should be co-owned?
Co-owned is quite common when you're working with lines and breeding dogs. Obviously, when you're breeding dogs, you can't have a house full of dogs, but everybody wants to use the new lines of importing dogs. So it really is to breeders come together and use the same dogs for breeding without having to have their own houses full of dogs. So it just makes things a little bit easier on breeders when they want to expand their gene pool and improve their lines when breeding. It's
a lot of effort they put into it, and presumably they want to do well because there are gains to be made.
Yeah. I mean, it becomes really a life for a lot of breeders. You know, it's like their dogs become their life. You have obviously the attachment with the bond of the dog, but you have goals as well. You're always trying to improve your last litter, and it really does become it can become quite an obsession. But something like Crufts is a platform to showcase what you've been doing over 20, 30 years or so.
Yeah, we imagine it's the biggest shop window really in the world for breeders like this. And as you indicate, breeders who get involved, they become very absorbed in what they're doing and competitive too, we presume.
Yeah, it does get quite competitive. But it's having a goal and it kind of justifies the work that they've been doing, and it's the same as any sport really. It's winning. It does get competitive. But I wouldn't think necessarily that would be the source of the poison. I wouldn't think that they were that competitive that somebody could do that to somebody else's dog, because then you have to think at some point they must think that could have been my dog. Well, so I wouldn't have thought that was the source of where the poison was coming from.
Well, you'd imagine, wouldn't you, that the overriding love of the animals would eclipse any desire somebody would have for personal advantage. Can you recall, Hannah, any incidents of this nature before? Is it an absolute one-off? And we ought to stress at this stage that we probably won't get the toxicology report until next week, but certainly one of the co-owners is saying that as far as they're concerned, some beef was poisoned. It's an absolutely clear-cut case. But can you recall anything remotely like this in the past?
Yeah. Well, I would think if it did happen at Crufts, it would be more likely to do with boycotting Crufts. There's a lot of people that are quite anti-Crufts. The RSPCA, PETA, they're quite against Crufts because of the breed standards within breeding aren't always favourable to the dog. And with my job with dog training in London and behaviour, I see a lot of dogs suffering because of because of breed standards that the Kennel Club put in place, or that breed clubs put in place to keep consistency within the breeds.
Just reading yeah.
I mean, there have been cases. There have been cases that I've heard of other trainers, training aggression out of dogs, and then they've gone on to win Crufts or a show and then they've been used for breeding, and they're thus spreading the genetic aggression that they had to pay the trainer to get rid of in the first place. So I would think it would be to do with boycotting crufts, the poisoning.
Well, we don't know at this stage, and I'm sure the organisations you mentioned would dispute any suggestion that they'd get involved in this way. I'm just reading, actually, Hannah, one of the co-owners saying that she didn't believe that this was another competitor or anyone involved in the dog world, as she put it. I can only imagine that it was a random act that somebody premeditated and wanted to cause total distress at the best dog show in the world. It's not unknown for people to do things like this. She goes on to say he was a typical Irish setter, totally trustworthy and so loved. We are devastated. And I imagine a great many people in what is quite a close community, that the dog breeding world will be similarly distressed.
Yeah, it's absolutely awful that somebody could have actually done this to an innocent as well. You know, it's really the innocence that is driven home. It's that, you know, completely not the dog's fault at all. And yeah, like you say, it must be premeditated. And you kind of have access to dogs in crufts. They're all out and about, and it wouldn't be too difficult to do. So yeah, it must have been premeditated, I would think.
Hannah Greeno, appreciate your time. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you very much.